All right. All right. So today I am going to talk about Vitess. And to start off with, Vitess is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Vitess, but Vitess is a graduated CNCF project. And it graduated last year. And it's one of the first storage projects to join the CNCF, also one of the first to graduate. And what it is at this point, the most important property of Vitess is that it is a cloud native database. We'll actually talk more about this as we go along. And the other cool property of Vitess is it's massively scalable. Actually, it initially was built for massive scalability, and later it became cloud native. I'll cover history about that. And highly available. What this means is that you can pretty much run Vitess with 5 nines of availability comfortably. And last but not the least, it is based on MySQL. The easiest way to quantify what this means, to grok what this means, is if you look at a key value store, it just lets you put and get data against keys. And what MySQL allows you to do beyond that is basically, if the data that you are saving and retrieving, there's a relationship between them, a system like MySQL allows you to model relationships between those pieces of data. And what Vitess does is actually extend that MySQL story into a sharded and massively scaled environment, which means that those relationships that you defined in a single MySQL instance can now span across a huge cluster that is fully sharded and developed worldwide. So that is a very simple way of describing Vitess. And these are some of the stats. Vitess is an open source project. The most important stat that you can see here is the one with no numbers, is who are the adopters of Vitess. So here is basically subset of some of the cool adapters that we have. Actually, there's a lot more that are coming on board. We need to go and get their permission from them to publish their names and stuff. But what is cool about this is Vitess is essentially something that becomes part of a company's core infrastructure. It's not something where you just try it out, if you don't like it, throw it away and then replace it. So when a company makes a decision to adopt something like Vitess, which is a database, they are essentially making a lifelong commitment. One could say that it's probably going to, the company is probably going to use that software for the rest of its life. I mean, there are companies today that have adopted a certain database like 30 years ago that are still on them, and some of them are trying to migrate out and they are struggling. So it is a very tough decision, and for this reason, it's actually hard for companies to make a decision about which storage system to use, so which means that they take a while. But when they decide, they are making actually a pretty serious commitment about the software. So looking at it from that perspective, it's kind of exciting to see the number of companies and the number of big companies. And also, these are companies that are what I consider technology leaders. Like when Slack goes to a conference and say, this is how we run our infrastructure, people want to know and want to adopt what Slack is doing. So that kind of stuff. So that's the part that is exciting about Vitess. So we'll change the gear a little bit. I want to talk about what it means to be cloud native. So cloud native for a database has always been a controversial subject. And the reason is because of Kubernetes' background. When Kubernetes first came out, it was mostly for stateless workloads. That's what it had in mind in the beginning. And I'll explain why that is the case. And even as of last year, you can see, I mean, no cloud presentation should be done without mention of Kelsey, right? So here's a tweet from Kelsey saying that if you're talking about moving databases to Kubernetes, be extremely careful because it's not straightforward. And for the longest time, even when Vitess was going to join, the first counter argument was, why is a database? Databases are not cloud native. They should not join CNCF. No? And then when they looked into Vitess, they saw the reasons why, and then that's how Vitess ended up getting accepted. But essentially what Kelsey is saying is you can't just take a database and run it in Kubernetes. It is not going to work well. And there are many reasons for it. And in the case of Vitess, there are two reasons why it is cloud native. The first reason is actually historical. The history behind Vitess was that when we first built it, this was in 2010, we built it to run on bare metal. And we were running in our own data centers at YouTube. And in 2013, we had to move to Google's Borg. And Google's Borg is the predecessor for Kubernetes. And guess what? Google's Borg was also built for mostly running stateless workloads. The data that Google engineers saved was actually provided to them as a transparent API that they could call into that will save their data and retrieve them. And there were very specific systems that did that. There was a key value store, and there's a blob store, et cetera, right? You could not just run a database inside Google's Borg. So how did we move Vitess to run on Google's Borg? What we basically did was we told Borg that just run Vitess like a stateless application. And we'll worry about making sure that data is not lost. And how we did that was we actually made sure that on every commit, the data went somewhere else. And if Borg would take a pod down, then the data was always somewhere else for us to resume our operation on that pod, right? But the most important thing that we did, which was actually one of the hardest things, was to keep Vitess open source. Google's Borg is a proprietary, the entire Google system is a proprietary API. And when we decided to say move Vitess to Borg, the first question that was asked, oh, I guess that means that you have to close source it. I don't know how you're going to run this on Borg. But we said we are going to try. So it was pretty hard. We had to build a bunch of interfaces, bunch of abstractions, just to keep Vitess running as an open source project. But we succeeded. So Vitess remained an open source project, and we were still running it in Google's Borg. Actually, an interesting piece of history is that when we built Vitess to use Zookeeper, and when we moved to Borg, we did not use Google's Chubby. We actually ran our own Zookeeper inside Google's Borg. That was a total sacrilege within the company. And only later did we actually build an adapter for that and then start using Chubby, which actually became kind of cool because when we moved to Kubernetes, we could quite easily adapt ourselves to use etcd also. So what is it that makes a storage system cloud native? And why is a system like MySQL or Postgres, why can't you just run it in Kubernetes directly, right? The reason is because those are just one process. They assume persistent data behind that, and they assume that they are not restarted that often. So, and the cloud doesn't expect your software to behave like that. It has the right to take you down whenever you want and move you to another location, et cetera, right? So we had to build the glue between that software that expected to be run in only one place against an environment that wanted to move you around. So the first thing we had to build was automation, which means that a cloud will come and spin up a pod saying that, okay, I'm going to spin you up here. When that happens, we have to be able to initialize that software by saying that, okay, oh, I've just been brought up as this key space or this shard or this database. I need to go initialize myself. So the software has to be capable of hunting down where its backup was, restore from that, and then find out where the master is, point itself, and initialize itself. Right? And then once that happened, the pod is up and it's up and running. The software that wants to use that database, that needs to be able to discover the fact that this new database is up and I should be able to talk to it. So we need to build discovery. If the cloud comes and takes down your pod, your master pod. You have to have the ability to fail over to a new replica and continue to serve traffic. And then finally, while all this is happening, we have to make sure that no data is lost, right? So all this glue is what we built in Vitess on top of MySQL to be able to run on Borg. And when Kubernetes came out, we were pretty much ready. So I said that we were running like a stateless application. How do you run as a stateless application and keep your data durable? So the way we did this in YouTube, and it's something that it's a configuration that we recommend, we allow people to use, but most people so far have preferred using persistent volumes, but you can run Vitess using emptydir by just simply relying on certain settings. Like for example, we say turn on semi-sync replication in MySQL. What that gives you is a guarantee that a commit will not succeed until one other replica at least has the data, right? So that basically gives you the guarantee that if the master is taken down, I can fail over to another replica. And we needed to install a failover mechanism in case a master was brought down. And there are so many other things that happen. Sometimes when a failover happens, it doesn't complete successfully or completely. The old master thinks that it is still the master, keeps publishing that it's the master. When all these things happen, we needed the ability to disambiguate who the real master is, detect the imposters, and ignore them. So all these things had to be built. And this is the reason, this is what makes Vitess cloud native. And this is the reason why a database system by itself is not cloud native. But the important thing is Kubernetes is here to stay. And it doesn't make sense that you just move your stateless workload to Kubernetes. At the end of the day, you want to run everything in Kubernetes. And it's only a matter of time when all these storage systems and databases have to figure out how to run inside this new platform. Essentially, it's a distributed operating system, and all software needs to be able to run in this platform. And it's exciting to have Vitess kind of blaze the trail on this technology. So here is a quick architectural view of what Vitess is. If you look at it, I won't spend too much time on this, but if you look at it from the perspective of the application connects to these VT gates. These are all stateless servers, and they can come up and they can scale up and down as needed. And what these stateless servers do is manage this huge complexity that is behind, where these VT tablets and MySQLs are running as pods inside Kubernetes. Kubernetes will bring them up and down. It doesn't, as they go up and down, these pods register themselves with the topology, and the VT gates discover these tablets through this topology and keep updating themselves, and thereby isolate the application from all these changes that are happening in the background. To put it very simply, these components are what bridge the cloud gap between a database and the application. And this is what makes Vitess cloud native. All right. So I'm going to cover a couple of case studies very quickly before I go into a very fast demo. So here is Slack. Slack was one of the early adopters of Vitess. They were experiencing hypergrowth, and at some point of time, they realized that they need to make a decision about their infrastructure. And they were looking for a build versus buy decision. And when they discovered Vitess, they found the best of both worlds. They could buy into Vitess for all the stuff that it was already capable of, but they could also build the features that they wanted into it because it's an open source project. So Slack is actually one of the major contributors of Vitess. And here's a quote from them. This shows the conviction that they have about Vitess, how much they love it, and more importantly, to what extent they trust the software. And here is something even cooler. This is last year. This year, all of us know COVID-19 hit in March, right? So in March, when it hit, Slack was one of the most affected organizations in a positive way. I mean, their traffic literally, I believe, what they had to do was, you probably know about the big tweet thread that Stuart tweeted about. And in one of them, he talked about their infrastructure engineers, and they talks about that they managed to keep 5 nines of availability through this huge growth in traffic. I believe they literally doubled their traffic over a weekend. That's how fast Slack grew from its already existing massive load. And even the cooler part is Stuart's recognition of the role that Vitess and PlanetScale played in keeping that running, which is kind of a proud moment for us. So JD.com is actually, I don't know how many of you know about JD. It's one of the largest companies in the world. It's the second largest retailer, or maybe the largest retailer in China. They have one of the largest Kubernetes instances in the world. They also have one of the largest Vitess instances in the world. They have about 4,000 key spaces, and they run about 30,000 Vitess pods. And last year, on Singles Day, which is kind of the Black Friday for China, the peak QPS that Vitess served for them was 35 million QPS. This essentially means that what it means is that there is no known scalability limit for Vitess. You can basically push it as hard as you have to. And so far, people that have pushed it have not hit a known limit, which is kind of pretty exciting. The other case study I want to talk about is Nozzle. Nozzle is a startup. You might not have heard of them. They are a SEO company. And why would they use something like Vitess, right? It is meant for just JD and Slacks. No, Vitess can work for even small companies. And the reason why they started using Vitess was because they wanted to run all in Kubernetes. And what was the benefit that they got from it was they got a good deal from Azure. And so they launched their cluster in Azure on AKS, and they were running there for a while. And then after a while, they got a better deal from GKE. So what did they do? In 1 hour, they packed their bags and migrated completely out of Azure into GKE. So that is what you get as an advantage if you run everything in Kubernetes. No vendor lock-in, complete portability. So the parting thought is, if you are moving to Kubernetes, don't leave your data behind, because if you run everything in Kubernetes, you get all kinds of benefits that you would not get otherwise. So I'm going to jump into a quick demo, but before the demo, there is this cool headset that you can get. And in order to get that, you can go to this URL, bit.ly campplanetscale.com. And if you register your name, you get a chance to win this headset. And I am going to now jump into the demo. So you may be a tinkerer or you may be a user, depending on what type of person you are. I would give you 2 different paths. One is, if you're a tinkerer type, then I would say go directly and play with the open source Vitess. The way you do that is go to vitess.io and click on Kubernetes Quick Start. And do not click on the Helm one. Click on the second one, which is the Vitess operator for Kubernetes. We'll actually switch the links up. And here are the steps for you to bring up your own Kubernetes instance. Actually, this example runs on Minikube, but you can bring up an instance on GKE or EKS or AKS and try this example out. So I would recommend you do that. If you're not a tinkerer, and if you're just wanting to say, okay, I like Vitess, I just want to use it, I don't want to go through these steps of setting it up and everything, you could go to planetscale.com, where what we have done is actually taken Vitess, the exact open source binaries, it's the same ones that we run, but we actually package it for you as a service. So what basically, you can go to PlanetScale and try it out, try bringing up a Vitess instance by yourself, and we'll deploy it as a service. But PlanetScale offers you a lot more. So I'm going to show you the kind of things you can do with PlanetScale. So I'm going to go click on create a cluster. If I say create a cluster, I say create cloud 2 as my cluster. And if you can see the options here, you see here that you can create a single region cluster. But single region cluster isn't exciting. We want multi-region. Multi-region is always cooler. But what is even cooler than multi-region is multi-cloud. So I can say that I want a cross-cloud cluster, which means that I want some instances in AWS, some in GCP, and some in Azure. So this is something that you can specify and do, and then you create a cluster. And I have created one such cluster, as you can see. And this cluster, I already have a database that I've deployed in there. And as you can see, there are multiple regions. If I go and connect here, actually, before I go and connect here, let me go show you the instances. You can see that there are two, there's a master in one AWS zone, AWS region, a replica in another region, and another one in GCP. If I click on the connect string, it gives me various strings. There is one for each of the ones that I've selected. I have this here, which is a connect string for the one in AWS Oregon. If I click on GCP, there's one for in GCP. And you just paste this, and the username and password you are supposed to have given it when you created the instance. And then if you can go, I'll show you how do you connect. You can say, for example, here is my connection string for the AWS one. I can do select. Here's one for my GCP. I'm using replica. Let me do a select here. So this one is from the data with the replica in GCP, and this one is a master in here. So I'm going to do a quick insert statement to show you. 3, boom, it says inserted. Now I'm reading it in GCP. The thing is replicated. So there's a presentation that Derek Perkins did from Nozzle, where he said he migrated from AKS to GKE in 1 hour. Now you don't even know that. You can now migrate by just failing over within a few seconds if you used PlanetScale. And but then, if you are using Kubernetes, why would what is so great? So all this happens is because we run Vitess in our own Kubernetes instances for you. But that's not really that great for you, because if you have your own Kubernetes, what's so great that we run your stuff in Kubernetes, right? This is where we allow what we call BYOK, or bring your own Kubernetes. So this is actually a beta product. So, and I will show you the bugs too that we have. So in this product, I can say, create your cluster, cloud 2, and we just announced this. You can say, I want to run this hosted service on my Kubernetes instance. So all I want to do is I want to create a custom region. So I create a custom region, and you go through these steps, and then it says you run these things. If I run this thing, let's see. So what it does is basically it says that download the script and run the script against your Kubernetes instance. So if you do that here, and what this does is it actually discovers your Kubernetes instance, makes some changes for it. And after it makes changes, it actually creates a bunch of roles and accounts that then PlanetScale has access to deploy Vitess instances in your Kubernetes instance. So you say, it says, copy this, and you paste it here, and then you say continue, right? And then you create the region. So I have created one such region. There is an engineer who is actually working very hard at fixing the bug where once you create a region, it won't let you create another one. So as soon as that is fixed, we'll allow you to create more regions. But then once you specify this region, you can then go ahead and create an instance, and that instance, that Vitess cluster now runs in your Kubernetes instance, but it is managed by PlanetScale's software as a service, which means that we know how to spin up instances, and you can use this dashboard for yourself to extend your database, reshard it, and do all those workflows. You can perform them right here. So that concludes my talk. And if you have any questions, I don't know, I probably ran just barely out of time. I can answer them on the Slack channel.